All right. So once again, everyone, welcome to this El Nino and climate update for FMG. This is something that uh, hopefully will help you to prepare for the weather that you might experience in the months and seasons ahead. My name is Ben Knoll, and I'm a meteorologist here at NIWA. I've been working with NIWA for almost 8 years now. And before that, I worked in the United States as a meteorologist with AccuWeather.com, a pretty popular weather outfit there, where I did long-range forecasting. Here in New Zealand, I lead NIWA's Seasonal Climate Outlook, which is a once-monthly outlook looking 3 months into the future, things like rainfall, temperature, soil moisture, river flows, and covering off things like El Nino and the different things that drive New Zealand's climate. So in today's presentation, we'll go through a couple of different steps. We'll have a quick look back at what has happened over the course of the last few months in terms of soil moisture and the New Zealand Drought Index. And then we'll look at how El Nino is tracking and what that means for the climate in the coming months and seasons ahead. And that will comprise the majority of the presentation. We won't spend too much time looking back. Sometimes I think all of us are aware of what's kind of happened in our region or on our farm, on our paddock, and oftentimes we know what has happened, and we know best for our specific area. So with that, we'll do a quick review of the climate conditions. Now, some of you may have seen similar presentations in the past, but really today it's kind of an introduction. Some of this material may be new for you, and that's all right. What I'm going to do is take some time to go through what the different plots that you are looking at are, what they mean, how they can be interpreted, and then perhaps the next presentation or the one after that, as we go down the line, it becomes a little bit more intuitive, and that's the idea here. So NIWA has a variety of ways that it measures the current state of dryness and drought. And what you're seeing on screen now, the left-hand image here, is what we call the New Zealand Drought Index. And it's kind of like a one-stop shop for measuring the current status of dryness and drought across the country. And it has 5 different categories, from dry to very dry, extremely dry, drought, and severe drought. So this enables us to kind of track in near real time the state of play across the country from a dryness and drought perspective. And pleasingly, at the moment, there's really not much to be seen on this map. It's nearly a blank map, aside from this little patch of yellow near East Cape, which kind of denotes a small area where conditions have been dry enough to kind of trigger the first tier of coloring on this map. But really, the conditions at the moment really aren't that bad across the country. One of the inputs to the drought index is soil moisture. So on the right-hand side, we have soil moisture as a difference from normal. Again, a real-time analysis of that. And this takes into account all of the climate stations that NIWA has across the country to kind of build that national level picture of soil moisture. And anywhere you see the green or blue shading, that indicates either normal or above normal soil moisture. And there's quite a few regions at the moment that are experiencing either normal or above normal soil moisture. Northland, Auckland, Bay of Plenty, the east coast of the North Island, and much of the South Island. There are a few exceptions to that general rule, including that little hotspot near East Cape where we just looked at, as well as parts of western Waikato and northern Taranaki, as well as Nelson Marlborough, parts of Wellington, and then just some small pockets down in Southland. So overall, the soil moisture picture is certainly not dire at the moment. We've had enough rainfall recently to kind of keep the soil levels, moisture levels elevated. So this is kind of useful context as we review, start to look at what's likely to happen into the future. And with that, we'll move toward climate drivers. So when we mention a climate driver, we're talking about who is basically at the steering wheel of Mother Nature's car. What is going to influence our weather patterns in the weeks, months, and seasons ahead? And one of the key ones for New Zealand is the El Nino Southern Oscillation. And the El Nino Southern Oscillation has three phases. There's El Nino, there's La Nina, and then there's neutral, which is neither El Nino nor La Nina, kind of the middle ground. This year, we have an El Nino event in the equatorial Pacific Ocean, and that's what I'm annotating now, is this area thousands of kilometers away from New Zealand, where we track the status of El Nino in the ocean. And despite it being quite a distance away from New Zealand, it is a very important piece of the climatic puzzle when we look to forecast. It explains up to about 25% of New Zealand's climate variability from season to season. So it's not the full pie, but it's a pretty big piece of the pie. And critically, it is the most predictable piece of the pie. And so forecasts are skillful 6 to 9 months into the future. And we can use that information to drive the climate modeling that we run to better understand how that'll filter down and flow down into Aotearoa and New Zealand. And this year, the key monitoring region that we focus on, forecasters focus on, is called the NIWA 3.4 region. And it's kind of in the central part of the Pacific Ocean. And this year, right now, that area is 1.8 degrees Celsius above average as of the latest reading. And once you get to about 1.5 degrees above average in that region, that's when we start to call it a strong oceanic El Nino signal. And it's been above that 1.5 threshold for a little while now, dating back to the month of October. So we've been sustained in that kind of strong oceanic El Nino territory for some time. And as that kind of persists and continues, it's likely to kind of start to play an important role in the weather and climate that we experience here in New Zealand during summer and autumn. Now, El Nino is not just measured in the ocean. There is an atmospheric component to measuring ENSO as well, and that's called the Southern Oscillation Index. So certainly a lot of the farmers that I have spoken to over the years like to use the SOI as one of the key measures for ENSO in our region. And that's because the SOI draws information from air pressure readings in Darwin in northern Australia and Tahiti in French Polynesia. And it's described by the difference in air pressure between those two zones. When the Southern Oscillation Index is positive, we tend to have La Nina-like patterns, and you can see very clearly these blue colors here, which constituted the big triple dip La Nina that we had between 2020 and 2023. But more recently, we've seen the Southern Oscillation Index start to trend negative. And that is a sign that the atmosphere is starting to respond to those changes in ocean temperature, and that the atmosphere is trending in an El Nino-like direction. And it was a little bit sluggish. After 3 years of La Nina, we did see the atmosphere kind of struggle to start to respond in a typical El Nino-like fashion. And in some respects, we actually are still kind of seeing that kind of coupling, as we call it, not really fully kind of established in a New Zealand context. We've had a lot of variability in our weather patterns, and I think an element of that is kind of heading out of this triple dip La Nina. The ocean system had a lot of momentum that was on the La Nina side, so it's taken some time to kind of break through and kind of get ourselves into more of an established El Nino-like pattern. Now, kind of another element of the El Nino that we have this year is that it's happening with the global context of very warm ocean temperatures. So what I'm showing you here at the top of the screen is the ocean temperatures in October 2023, 1997, and 1982. And those years were picked because they were strong El Nino episodes in the past. And in fact, 82, 83, that summer, and 97, 98 were very significant impacts, El Nino years for New Zealand. There was drought conditions across many regions. But it doesn't take a meteorologist or a climate scientist or a rocket scientist to kind of see how things are very different in the year 2023, and that there is warm ocean water, not just in the kind of equatorial Pacific Ocean, but in the Atlantic, in the North Pacific, near Europe, in the Indian Ocean. These areas were not that unusually warm in those past El Nino events, and that is kind of the illustrates how our climate and our oceans are changing and warming. And with that kind of more widespread heat that we were seeing this year, it kind of spreads out the energy. So instead of focusing right on the equator, like we had during, say, 1997, 98, what we see is kind of it splays out and it kind of focus on other regions of the globe. And what that can do is introduce a little bit more variability in the weather patterns that we experience. And in some ways kind of make this El Nino that we have more maybe non-traditional compared to those past events. And this is going to be very important, I think, as we go into summer, is that if you are on your farm or you've been farming for a long time, say more than 40 years, I don't think we're going to see, a carbon copy, let's say, of 1997, 98 or 1982, 83. And part of that is to do with the warming of the oceans that we have seen. Now, in terms of the duration of this El Nino event, the bottom image here shows the probabilities of La Nina conditions, neutral conditions, and El Nino for all the way through winter of 2024. That's the very last row. And we can see the probabilities here at the top are all 100%, and that takes us through the summer season, December through February. And then as we go into autumn, still seeing a pretty high chance for El Nino's continuation, 88%. So it does look like this El Nino event is going to have a bit of a long tail. So the impacts may well linger in through the first half of 2024. I wouldn't be surprised if we're still seeing El Nino-like effects maybe lingering right up until the start of winter. I guess it's to say that even if you have had a good amount of rainfall and your conditions are doing pretty well on your farm, your paddock, your region at the moment, it's kind of an idea to not get complacent and really stay ahead of the game here because there's a long way to go with this El Nino event.